This is Lars Callieou, and you're listening to Oilers Live Podcast.
Oilers Live Podcast.
So, welcome to Oilers Live Podcast. I've got as my guest tonight Lars Callieou, who is a Oilers fan, and he's also a local Edmonton comedian, and local only in the sense that he's from Edmonton. He travels around the world doing comedy. Great guy, good friend of mine, and well, I'll let him speak to whether or not we're good friends. I consider him a good friend, but happy to have you on, and thanks for being here. By the way, this is my first in-person interview on the Oilers Live podcast, so congrats on that one.
Hey, look at that. No one else was allowed in the house.
That's right, yeah, that's right. Nobody else has seen the world headquarters of the Oilers Live podcast.
Yeah, this is like, to give people a visual of where Mike lives, it's a 17-bedroom mansion right in the heart of Calgary, so it's pretty exciting. That's neat. I've never seen like a hot tub next to the bed. That's really cool.
Yeah, 3 servants to every guest that we have here. Oh, it's swank, let me tell you. This podcasting is it's really paying off for me. Yeah, it was a side hustle, but now, you know, I mean,
yeah, it took off. 30
episodes in, it's a big deal. So one of the things, you know, when I started doing the podcast, and I've kind of got away from, because I've had a lot of the same guests actually over and over again, because nobody else would return my calls. But you know, I want to know, like, what when were you an Oilers fan? Did you grow up? You grew up around Edmonton?
Yeah. So I was born in '75, and my
you're a lot older than me.
Yeah, 10 years.
yeah, at least. Yeah.
And we didn't have a home growing up. My parents were musicians, and we traveled with the band.
Yep.
And so we were on the road 50 weeks a year. We only stopped traveling 2 weeks a year at Christmas to stay with my grandma.
Oh, wow.
Near Fort St. John, a little place called Farmington. That's where we'd spend Christmas. And Edmonton was kind of a central point, you know, if you were going to Manitoba or Ontario or Northwest Territories or BC. Edmonton was always somewhere you'd pass through. So we spent a lot of time in Edmonton, and eventually bought a house just outside of Edmonton in 88 or 89. But my dad was always I thought my dad was always an Oilers fan. I didn't know that there was a pre-Oilers, because I would have been, you know, Oilers came in when I was 4 or 5 years old, like into the NHL. And when they won in 84, we happened to be in Edmonton, so I got to go to the Stanley Cup parade in 1984.
Right on.
And fun little, my dad, parents are intuitive. My dad was incredibly smart, and we were enjoying the parade, and I remember I would have been 9 years old, and my dad said, this is about to turn ugly, we're going. And I was sad, because I was sad. And we left, and then there was a riot.
At the Oilers parade?
Yeah, and I remember that was the first time.
Like Canucks-style riot? Or what? Oh,
and
wow.
they brought in like water cannons, and like they were spraying the people back with a fire hose. And
you know what? I was obviously in Edmonton at the time.
Yeah.
But I don't remember that at all.
Yeah.
84, 85.
It would have been 84, the first Stanley Cup. And I remember being down there and my dad saying, like, we're leaving now.
Yeah.
And being sad. I was like, oh, I don't want to leave. Like, it's here. It's exciting. And then I remember watching the news. And, I mean, it was not, you know, we're talking 34 years ago. And so perhaps my memory's hazy, but I remember watching the news and having people like hit with a fire hose, and my dad explained to me how the Riot Act worked. Once they read the Riot Act, then you have to clear the streets, because they consider it a riot, and the police kind of have, you know, carte blanche. They can do whatever they want. So
yeah.
But I was at I got to I touched the Stanley Cup like with a fingertip as it walked by. I was on my dad's shoulders, and I remember so I've been an Oilers fan since I was 4 years old, but my dad explained to me years later that in Canada you were generally either a Maple Leafs fan or a Canadiens fan. If you were French, you were a Canadiens fan, and that's why there's so many fans of the Maple Leafs and the Canadiens when so when they come through, the stadium's packed with Toronto fans. But that was all pre, you know, like going back original 6 and then the first expansion and then the next one. So I was like, wow, it never occurred to me that my dad was ever anything other than an Oilers fan. So
let's out your dad here. Was he a Leafs fan or
he was a Leafs fan?
He was a Leafs fan.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And does any of that run through your veins?
Not even a little, because
Okay, good.
like I said, I was 5-6 years old. I was like, oh, and I remember when the playoffs were on, my mom we'd get to eat dinner in the living room, and it was such a treat. Oh man, I like
in your Sunday clothes.
Yeah. I loved it. We would get to watch hockey, and when I was really young, I would always just ask my dad, what color are we cheering for? And he would tell me which color we were cheering for. I was like 4 or 5 years old. I'm like, all right, we're cheering for the blue team. But I always loved it, and I always used to make these charts of like the playoff charts, and when the Oilers, and I mean back then the Oilers were winning so much that you're like, oh, we're just going to win Stanley Cups forever. So
it's funny. If you're not following, there's an account on Twitter, Vintage Oilers. Have you followed
I think
that?
so.
Yeah. And whoever it is that's sending out those tweets had a tweet of the Campbell Conference AllStars, and there were 8 Oilers, and both Andy Moog and Grant Fuhr were the goaltenders. This was the All-Star team. Lee Fogelin. I'm not sure what year it was, but I mean, obviously they can't do that anymore. They pick a player from every team, but I doubt very much there was a player from every team then. It was pretty much all Oilers.
Yeah.
It
was fun, and then during the the 87 the Summit Series, it was all Oilers. I have some old pamphlets and pullouts from that. I remember
really?
Cops Coliseum. Yeah. I mean, I still have a whole bunch of newspapers from the runs in it would have been the 88. That one, the 87, 88. It was cool.
That would have been Boston, right? I think.
Yeah,
Boston. I actually, I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast yet, but back, I think it was 88, playing Boston in the finals. My father, he would operate he was a fruit vendor, and so I would go, and he had multiple fruit stands around Edmonton, and so I would go work for him in the summers, and right from being like 12 years old, and this was back in the day when you were allowed to ride the bus by yourself. You didn't need your parents and helicoptering over you. So I'm out there working north towards Namao.
Mm-hmm.
I was working a fruit stand, and I'd take the bus home. I'd pack everything up. I'd drive at 13 years old, or I think 13, 75. There's that nasty number coming out, and would drive the fruit truck. We used to hide it in the trees, and every night. And so I would drive that, hide it, and then I'd hop on the bus and go home. And I would go past the Coliseum at the time on my way home. I would have, no word of a lie, like $1,000 in cash. And so this, a 13-year-old kid, $1,000 in cash, and twice during those finals, walking past the Coliseum right at game time, and right as the game was started, and 2 times somebody said, "Hey kid, do you want to buy a ticket, like less than face value, because the puck had already dropped." And I had $1,000 in cash on me, at least a minimum $1,000. And both times I said yeah. And for those of you born in the 2000s, there was this old phone that you used to put a quarter in, and you'd call. That's how you called home. I couldn't text my dad and say, "Hey Dad, I'm going to be late." I'd call him from the first intermission and say, "Hey Dad, I just bought a ticket to the finals." So I was sitting up in the nosebleeds, right? Yeah. I seem to remember that being like paying like $25, $30, right? The last time we were in the playoffs here 2 years ago, to give you an idea of how times have changed, I didn't go to Edmonton to watch a playoff game, but I did go to San Jose.
Yeah.
So we went to San Jose. Bought a plane ticket and probably paid. We just spent overnight. Probably all said and done about $2,200-$2,300. It wasn't even the finals, right?
Yeah.
Now I had a choice. I could go to Edmonton and spend $3,500 to watch a playoff game,
Yeah.
not even the finals, or go to San Jose and pay $2,500 or whatever. So times have changed. $25. The only Stanley Cup Finals games I've ever been to, probably for that price ever, right? Like, you'd never get that. What about your first hockey game? You remember that?
No, I remember going to watch the Oilers practice whenever they were at West Edmonton Mall. If we were in town, I got all the autographs.
The
Still
Ice
have them.
Palace. Yeah.
The only autographs I didn't get was Paul Coffey and Wayne Gretzky. So
no way.
Yeah, at this point in my life, I would have met almost everybody from those teams.
Yeah.
With the exception of Wayne Gretzky. I've never crossed. I met his dad a bunch of times.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I did comedy at the Walter Gretzky CNIB charity golf tournament.
Yeah, and Wayne wasn't there.
No, but Walter was.
Yeah.
And there was a funny... So I'm coming through the door, and Walter Gretzky he's coming in, and I'm going out the door. And, I got to, stop and let him in. And I go, Mr. Gretzky, very nice to meet you. I used to watch your son play hockey.
Yeah.
And without missing a beat, he goes, which one?
No way.
Yeah, and I swear to God. And I go, Brett. Yeah, he didn't. He was sharp. He had lots of because he speaks at the end of the dinner, and he had lots of funny anecdotes and funny stories, and it was really, really funny. And so, so I've met Walter and everybody else, but I've still never met Wayne Gretzky.
My dad used to come home from there was David's Pub on Argyle. I don't know if you remember it. I mean, by the time we were 18, I think it had shut down.
Yeah, I think I know which one you're talking about, though.
Yeah, it was on Argyle at 91st Street around there. Yeah, there's a used hockey store, equipment store there.
And the Oilers used to hang out at that one all the time?
Yeah, they used to be there. Mm-hmm. So my dad would go there. He was a good drinker, so my dad would go there after work or whatever before he'd come home. And he would get home and he would... throw a pack of matches, because back then you could smoke in the bar. He'd throw a pack of matches at me, and he'd say, "Hey, look at who I ran into," and he'd have Wayne Gretzky's autograph.
Right on.
Regular occurrence. And I don't remember the last time I saw a NHL player in the wild. Right?
I ran into Ryan Smith at a Quiznos.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. And whenever I see somebody famous, I turn and I recognize it's Ryan Smith, and I go, you probably get this a lot, but you know who you look like?
What's the best response you've had to that?
They usually laugh, because they realize that they've been recognized. But I don't want to be like, oh hey, and then for whatever reason. And it could be any kind of celebrity. I'm like, you probably get this a lot, but you know who you look like? So I said to Ryan Smith, I go, man, you scored 100 goals your last year of junior. Yeah. And I don't know why I remembered that stat, but he goes, yeah, he's like, I had to score 5 goals in the last game in order to get to 100, and it happened. And I was like, oh, cool. Right?
Yeah.
It was a fun conversation with him. So who else? I got hired by Ford for the Edmonton Motor Show to introduce a bunch of the Oilers. So the Oilers were appearing there, a bunch of them. And so I get there. They're paying me. Normally I wouldn't talk money, but they're paying me. As a comedian, you do a lot of corporate stuff, and you'll do emceeing, do all kinds of stuff. So they're like, okay, we just need you to introduce the Edmonton Oilers. We'll pay you $650. And I'm like, okay. So get the contract from the agent and everything, and I go down there, and they hand me a cordless microphone and a sheet, and I read off the sheet, ladies and gentlemen, your Edmonton Oilers. And then I hand them back the microphone, and they hand me a check, and I leave.
No way.
That was like, I'm what?
all that stuff you've learned all this time, and you had no idea, right?
I'm like, all right. Yeah, so I've met a few of them there, but it's been fun, man, watching this kid, oh boy. Yeah. I was at a game 2 years ago, and McDavid was, on a breakaway or something, and I was sitting next to this guy, probably 65, 70 years old, and I said, after McDavid goes and blows around a defenseman, I said, that's the fastest player I've ever seen in my life. And the 70-year-old guy turns to me and goes, that's the fastest player I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've never seen speed like that. And the ability to operate your hands at that speed. Oh, God.
You know, let's talk some Oilers hockey. I think, you know, the thing I notice most about McDavid, and you know, we can take all sorts of negative ways to talk about the Oilers if we want, but you know, the guys that really are true fans, they realize how special we have it, right? You and I, we grew up watching Gretzky, and for that matter, we watched some of the greats of all time, right? Lemieux and Yzerman and these guys, right? But you know, we are now seeing something somewhat similar with the likes of Crosby and McDavid, and we're just that much luckier because we have somebody on our team that we, you know, if as hockey fans, we try to watch as many games as possible. I actually don't miss a game, but you know, I know you're on the road a lot, so I have no doubt you might miss a few. But every single game, it's like he could get 10 goals.
Yeah.
Right? Like he just, it's just remarkable. And it's, you know, they always, any game they talk about a game of inches, but that's the difference between him and Darryl Sittler's goal record, right?
Yep.
Is inches every single game. And I actually watched, I was bored and sitting right over here watching a PVR game from last year a couple nights ago. It was they were playing Tampa Bay.
Yep.
And McDavid in the first period had 3 brilliant scoring opportunities. Not just scoring, but you know, pass it off to Strome, and Strome missed like a tap in, or you know, Kajula I think shot one over the net on an empty net, right? And that's 3 points that McDavid would have had, you know, if you know somebody had just finished their, you know, end of the deal. And that's not to take anything away from those players. They're good. Nobody's quite as good as you know McDavid is, but still remarkable.
Nobody can keep up. It's and who could? I mean, it's the best. And as a fan of, you know, I love watching Crosby. Man, oh man, when he scored the golden goal, you know, to win the goal, like you know. So as a fan, I enjoyed watching Crosby. The fact that it's, you know, McDavid's on our team is surreal, and that was, I mean, So, do you have a favorite McDavid memory yet? I mean, you know, there's quite a few, right? Obviously, quite a few highlights, but do you have any favorites that you remember? Well, I've never thought about this till now, by the way. Yeah. I think that it always interests me that the people that excel, that are truly at the best at what they do, a Jordan, a McDavid, you know, Sampras popped into my head, but who's the Federer, you know, somebody like that, is the love they have for the practice. Yeah. And so deliberate practice, and you know, you've done physical training, it's not just going to the gym, it's the deliberate practice. It's perfect practice. And McDavid works on those little things that, you know, it was like watching Gretzky, because Gretzky was exceptional at every little thing because of how much he loved the game. So my favorite McDavid memory, I don't know if probably sitting next to that old guy and, you know, imagining that this guy got to watch Bobby Orr, who was, you know...
unreal.
Yes, and there's so many people that were fast players, Paul Coffey, and so here I am, you know, 40 years old, saying, I can't believe how fast this guy is, and then the 70-year-old guy beside me saying, yeah, that's the fastest player I've ever seen, thinking that maybe he saw somebody like Guy Lafleur that would have, you know, just been so much faster. Rocket, you know, the guys that Pavel Bure was, you know, almost that fast. So I think as far as like highlight reel stuff, probably just commenting with that old guy is my favorite current memory. And then I talked with who's the guy who does the 6 o'clock? Just drew a blank. Reed Wilkins.
Yeah.
So before we won the draft lottery, everybody was talking about how McDavid was going to be a generational player. Oh, I can't believe how great this guy is. He's going to be amazing, blah, blah, blah. And so I called in to Reed's show, and I said, and I've known Reed for a while, and he's a great guy and a friend, and so I called in and I said, Reed, everybody's talking like this kid is going to be the greatest, blah, blah, eye roll, right? And we hadn't won the draft lottery yet, and I said, is he Like, in your opinion,
Yeah.
do you think he's going to be as good as everybody says? And Reed Wilkins said, I think he's going to be better.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? You know, I'm like, it's so, because you get the jump from junior, and, you know, I'm like, honestly, you really think? And he goes, yeah. He said, this guy is putting up better than Crosby numbers in a tougher league. And Reed was 100% right. You know, it was cool because it's like, wow, well, all right. And I usually defer to Reed when I have a question. I'm like, hey, what about this? And Reed's been right every time I've had a question for him. So
A lot like Oilers Live podcast.
exactly like Oilers Live. Precisely.
Yeah.
Although I think your numbers, I mean, Reed doesn't live in a house like this.
No. Clearly he doesn't. I mean, I'm getting in the hundreds of listeners.
Do you make your staff listen to, like, does the butler?
Oh yeah. They're all.
Do you quiz them sometimes?
Yeah. They
The
help
chauffeur
produce
has to-
They help produce the show sometimes, as a matter of fact. Yeah.
Have you ever answered when your first game was?
No. You know what? I don't remember first game. I remember. So we weren't well to do. We grew up. Grew up in the South Side, and I'm trying to remember. I shouldn't admit to this. I actually wasn't an Oilers fan when I was little.
Really?
I was a Habs fan.
Huh.
So and you know what? I chalk it up to being little and just trying to be different.
Yeah,
right.
being spiteful.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, but you're like, I'm not going to be like you guys. I'm going to be
Exactly.
There's always
That's
one
exactly.
kid in the house that cheers
I
for
was that kid.
a terrible team like the Flames.
Yeah. I never once cheered for the Flames. Let's get real. All right, I never stooped to that level. I was a Habs fan, and my French heritage. That's my whole family was full of Habs fans. I grew up loving Guy Lafleur. I've got a great Guy Lafleur story. I'll tell you one day, and I'm sure I've told it on the podcast. But anyway, I remember my dad would, just on a whim, which you did in the lower middle class families, you didn't have money saved up to go to a hockey game, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes I think he would just say, tonight's the night we're going to treat you to something good. And I just grew up with my dad. It was just my dad and I. And so he'd come home just like when I was 5. He decided I was going to play hockey, and he showed up one day with used hockey equipment. And that hockey equipment really never left me. I wore that hockey equipment for a whole week after that. I put it on that night, it fit, and I was walking around the community in my hockey equipment for about a week. Anyway, so it was stuff like that. Like, he would just sort of on a whim say, tonight's the night I'm going to, treat my boy to something good. And so what we would do is we would get in the car and we'd go and we'd park, I think, downtown, hop on the LRT, go to the Coliseum, and we'd search for a scalper that was selling at the right price. And so I remember that. I remember, though, he would do it on a game where, it was a crap team. And back in those days, the crap teams were Detroit. Like, they'd come to town. And so I remember watching Detroit and L.A.
Yeah, because nobody wanted tickets.
Nobody else wanted. So we would go. That's when he would say, we're going to go watch a game. And actually, those games, what was great was you could walk down to the ice level because there was guaranteed to be some seats that nobody was sitting in.
Yep.
So, and as a 6, 7, 8-year-old kid, that's where you wanted to watch the game. You want to be right up there. Now, I hate ice level seats because you can't see the whole rink, right? Yeah. So I do. That's what I remember. I remember getting off of the LRT, walking in, and my dad negotiating for tickets. And I swear, by the way, that the same scalpers that left Rexall were the same ones, 30 years later, like the same guys. I always thought, and they never seemed to age. They always looked the same.
Wearing the same SunIce jacket.
That's the SunIce jacket. Yes, absolutely. And so that's my memory. I don't remember. I'm sure it was a Detroit game, and the Oilers won 13-2. Now, I wasn't an Oilers fan, as I said. I was a Habs fan, grew up a Habs fan. I hated the Oilers to some extent because they actually played the Habs in the playoffs. I don't know if you know.
Yeah,
It was
absolutely. It was
1980,
a five-game
right?
series. They
five-game
upset them. It was a huge deal.
That's right. And so I was mad about that, and I stayed mad about that for a couple of years. But I was a big Paul Coffey fan.
Really?
Huge Paul Coffey fan. I've always been a defenseman, and I've always been a bit of a offensive defenseman. But even though I didn't like the Oilers at the time, Paul Coffey was like, the best guy in the world. So I was pretty excited. In fact, and I've lost it since. I had the when he scored the goal that gave him the new goal scoring record
For defenseman?
For a defenseman. There was the Edmonton Sun came out and he was holding a puck up and it had the number. I think it was 47 goals, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to look that up. But that's what I remember. And I kept that for the longest time because he was him and Guy Lafleur. Guy Lafleur was my idol, but Paul Coffey was outstanding.
While Mike looks that up, I had a vision of him, 5-6 years old, walking around in August in his hockey equipment around the neighborhood, and the kids go, "What's going on with that kid? Why is he in hockey equipment?" And then them going, "Oh, he's a Habs fan." Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
they're all a little off, it's fine. That way he doesn't get hurt,
47th goal, yep. So good memory.
And he scored 49 that year, didn't he?
Yeah, that I don't know.
Because there would have been 5 or 6 Oilers with 50 goals that year if he would have scored one more.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
See, I don't remember that, but I do. I remember the number 47. It was like white out.
Yeah,
on the puck. Yeah, white and him holding it up on the front of the Edmonton Sun. Now, did you go to a lot of games growing up?
No, I was the same as you. So my parents were musicians, and if they weren't working or if we happened to be in Edmonton, or even when we moved just outside of Edmonton, we lived out by Devon on an acreage, we were, lower middle class, so there wasn't a whole lot of, and we would, basically go down. And I remember we went and saw a Capitals game, and we were looking for scalp tickets.
Yeah.
And we were at Will Call. We were just going to go in and see if we could buy some, and this older couple was like, "Hey, we have a spare pair if you just want them," and they gave them to us, and they were all right seats. And I watched Mark Messier.
Never happened.
Yeah.
Never happened. Yeah.
Mark Messier getting a fight, and I remember Mark Messier fighting, and he hit the guy. The guy was against the glass, and he hit him and broke the guy's helmet in half. And I was just like, "This guy's an absolute beast." So.
And Semenko was the one they all feared, but Mark Messier equally as fearful.
Yeah, he was an absolute. Yeah, he was a killer. So I tweeted out that it was going to be on the podcast and said if anybody had any questions, and Morgan _82 said, "Who was better, Corey Cross, Scott Turd Ferguson, or Sven Buttenshawn?" Well, that's a tough one. I'm gonna go with Turd Ferguson on that one.
Yeah. Hard not to say he was the best of the three.
Yeah. Morgan said the correct answer, Ilya Biakin. All right. Okay. Defenseman from the 90s that barely played. Yeah. So it's and for your listeners, so Michael and I went to university together. So we would have started in university in 96. Did you start in 96 or 94?
95.
95, yeah. 95. So I was on Dean's vacation that year. So I started in 94.
No idea what that is.
So it was academic probation, but they called it Dean's vacation.
No. I think they pretty much coined that phrase, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I had 95 off and then came back in 96. And so, for 22 years, I've been a fan of, and for your listeners, they might not know, you're actually a really good hockey player.
I'm not bad. Yeah, we did. So my team was in the playoffs the other night, and we lost 7-1.
Oh, no.
It was gross. Yeah, and I was on defense for only 2 of those goals, mind you, but still, it was awful. And you know what, though, I'll take from that game is there was a woman on the other team who plays for the Golden Bears. And I won't say her name, but she is outstanding.
Really?
And she burnt me so bad. Like, I looked down to see if my skates were still tied. She was unbelievable. And back in 95, actually it was 96, I coached a team, women's team, at the university. It was like a rec team, sort of a competitive rec team or whatever for the women. But back then, I mean, women barely played. You know, it was. I mean, there were a lot of women played ringette.
Yeah.
But women's hockey wasn't as big by any stretch as it is now. Yeah, it's come so far. Like, she didn't look out of place. In fact, she was probably their best player.
Wow.
And the Golden Bears, for fans of Edmonton, they have probably one of the best women's hockey programs in the country. And I know we've got on Oilers Twitter, there's a ton of very knowledgeable women, of course, of Oilers Twitter. And so I think back when we grew up, that was probably, more of a rarity than it was, the norm.
Yep.
Now I would say there's... typically a lot of women that I've tried to get. I'll probably have some more women on the podcast because they've got a different perspective, obviously, of the game than we do, thinking differently than we do quite often, but just as valuable and kind of neat. Anyway, just from a skill level, she was outstanding and killed me.
I had a chance to play against the women's Olympic team. It was a corporate thing.
Yeah. Corporate thing. Nice.
So they went around and played corporations, and we donated money to the program. And so 20 people from Epcor, power company that before I became a full-time comedian.
Yeah.
I worked for them.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And I got to play, and I faced off almost the entire game against Cassie Campbell. Wickenheiser was there. And I have a picture of Cassie Campbell jerseying me.
Nice.
Yeah, and so it was awesome, and we got beat by the team 14-0. But I did hit a post.
Yeah.
On a 2-on-1, I had a pretty wide open net. I just couldn't quite reach it. But.
So, have you played? Have you had a chance to get on the ice with any NHL alumni ever?
No.
So I play probably. I'm going to say 3-4 games a year, where in alumni type of tournaments. And I've talked about this on the podcast. I am an avid hockey player. I probably average, and I'm not making this up, 5 games a week.
Cool.
Yeah. So when a tournament comes up and I can play, I travel to Vancouver and play in tournaments there, or travel to Toronto and play in tournaments there. If you're listening on the podcast and you got a tournament you want me to play in, I'd be happy to make the trip. I'll pay my way and go and play some hockey. I'm thinking about these women out there, 14-0, and they probably didn't even turn it up.
No.
Right? That's good players, right? Like they, it's just unreal. Like it's pretty special, the women's hockey team. They are fantastic players. If I think I know this young lady that I was playing against the other night. I know she's not on the Olympic team, but she's not that far away.
Yeah.
And the Olympic team is, the NHL, right? Like,
yeah.
like that's the women's NHL right there. That's the best players, in the world that get out there and play. And of course, Canada has, the best players in the world. They're unreal, and that would have been a fun game.
Yeah, it was really cool. And then we got to hold their gold medals after, and sat around and had some drinks with them after the game. We played at the Coliseum in Edmonton. I think it might have been Skyreach then, or maybe it was Rexall already. I think it was Skyreach.
I forgot about Skyreach.
Yeah, yeah. So it was good. It was fun.
What about as you go around? Do you ever get a chance in your travels? I don't know. Do you go out to any NHL cities and get a chance to watch any games?
I have. I got to see a game in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
I've seen more baseball games than I have I've seen one football game, one NFL game in Seattle. That was cool. And I've been to about 10 or 12 Major League Baseball stadiums.
Yeah.
But I've only seen, I think Winnipeg is the only other stadium I've been to. I've been inside the one in Tampa.
Yeah.
It's right next to where a cruise ship, I used to tell jokes on cruise ships, right there. But Winnipeg, and we were in the very last row. We were passing through for some shows in Thunder Bay, and we were in the very last row behind the goaltender, and the seats were still great. You know, it was like 14,500 or not quite 15,000, I don't think. And it was a really fun stadium, and it was and if people, most people probably know this if they're hockey fans, but it was the company True North that brought the Jets back. So when they sing the national anthem in Winnipeg, when you get to the True North, Strong and Free, the audience shouts True North. Yeah, and it's a cool little tribute to them. They
do in Calgary. They do C and Red when they sing the American anthem.
Really?
They yell C and Red, and it must be slow because it took me forever to realize why they were doing that, and then it just came to me one day, and I thought, oh, all right. You know, I always wonder how those things get started. You know, obviously, like a group of fans go every game, they yell, and then people start maybe around them or whatever. Anyway, you've got a gig tonight.
Yes.
And so we probably don't have a lot more time. You've got a lot of fans on Oilers Twitter. When's the next time you're back in Edmonton? And you do some regular things there, right?
Yeah. So I have a show Thursday, September 6th in Edmonton, and I am going to be going to Germany to watch the game in Cologne.
Serious?
Mm-hmm. So I've done.
That's a big deal. That's the first I've heard of it. That's a big deal. That's awesome.
So Oilers Nation, Dan from Oilers Nation, happened to be in Vegas when I was there. So I was in Vegas in February, and I kind of timed my shows around the Oilers playing in Vegas.
Yeah.
So I guess I've been to their stadium as well. Yeah. So Dan from Oilers Nation came to my show in Vegas, and it's cool because there's actually an Oilers fan who came to my show in Melbourne when I was there. So I was in Australia, and they were there. I don't know if they were competing in or one of their friends or family was competing in the Commonwealth Games, which was in Australia this past March or April.
Yeah.
And so they came out to a show in Melbourne. So there was a person with an Oilers shirt. They didn't have their jersey on, but they had a hat and a shirt. And a couple of Oilers fans in Australia. So I'm going to the game in Cologne, and then Dan from Oilers Nation, we're going to go to Munich and spend a couple of days at Oktoberfest. And then he's before the game, and then he's going to go to Sweden to watch the game there.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. So Jamie Shima, who you might know from Twitter, is also going to the game in Sweden. Good friend, super nice guy. So anyway, looking forward to that. You know, seeing the game over there. It was where Draisaitl is from, and his dad coaches the team they're playing against. They're playing a European team, German team, I guess. And so I'm looking forward to that. But Thursday, September 6th, at Casino Yellowhead, I have a show with two Australians. So I've done the Melbourne Comedy Festival 4 years in a row, and I'm bringing over two of my favorite Australian comedians. So it's 8 o'clock. If anybody wants tickets to that, you can reach me at Extra Lars, EXTRA, Extra Lars, at Twitter, Instagram, whatever. And then I'll be in the Edmonton Comedy Festival in October. And otherwise, I'm taking the Australians on a tour, so we're going to be going all over the place. I'm taking them to Banff, Canmore. They have that show in Edmonton. They have one in Calgary as well.
Yeah.
So the Australians will be in Calgary on the 10th of September. It's a Monday. And then we go up to Grand Prairie, where Mike Dursa, who's he's coming to the show up there, I hope. So we'll be in Grand Prairie.
He might be your biggest fan, by the way.
He's super nice.
He is awesome.
Super nice guy,
awesome guy. He's been on the pod.
Yeah. And so if you follow me on that, and the show there on the 6th is going to be really fun. So we have a show in Leduc as well, and then like I said, Calgary, Grand Prairie, Fort St. John. There's a little comedy festival up there that we'll be in. So
so a little bit of everywhere.
Yeah.
And for those listening, I mean, I've obviously known Lars for a long time before I've ever seen him on stage. I knew this guy, and I was amazed the first time. You know, when you know somebody, right, and you don't have any expectations. You go out,
Yeah.
Like, I don't remember Lars telling jokes even, right? Like, I mean, all your friends are funny, and we grew up with some funny guys at university, right?
Yep.
And so I love your show, absolutely love it. I've seen some of your jokes probably now a dozen times. And I'm still rolling over in my seat every time I see them, like it's the first time I've heard this joke. And one of the things I can truly say about you that I've admired and probably is the biggest thing. Two things. One thing is, I remember the day you kind of decided you were going to. I actually ran into you in Edmonton, and you had just left it was like your last day at Epcor, and you said, "I'm doing this thing full time," right? And I'm like, holy shit, like, I can't believe this. This is great, right? Like, and I hadn't even seen your show yet, right? And you were going full time at it, and I thought that was great. But I read an article about you, and it stuck with me. And then I've kind of, having known you and seen you around, it stuck with me. And that's being a student of your craft and understanding things. And it's one thing for people to be funny and get out there and tell jokes and do all that stuff. But there's a lot of work involved, I suspect. And it's not about, just getting out there and saying a couple one-liners. You got to have... you got to know what you're doing and know, I'm sure there's some natural talent in there too, but I admire somebody who takes that level of effort, and it shows in your shows. It shows in everything. I listened to Comic Genius the other night, right? You're, just everything you do, I can tell there's thought behind it, and it's not like, you're just some yahoo who decided he'd tell a few jokes. I admire that a lot. It shows a level of professionalism that we don't always get to see. Happy to have you as a friend. Happy to have you here in the mansion, the OilersLive Mansion. Maybe we'll get you a picture of you on the wall and get you to sign it as the first guest, and hopefully I'll get you back on the pod. I'm going to your show tonight. Pretty excited. I guess you're hosting a local or a Canadian comedian, which
Tim Nutt with 2 T's.
Yeah.
Fantastic guy. And also, we spent last night, Tim and I were up until about 1:30 in the morning talking comedy, and that'll happen when when somebody's been doing comedy a long time, you just sit and talk with them. And it's fun because he and I saw eye to eye on almost everything.
Yeah.
It was really, when it came to, and doing stand-up comedy, the easiest thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
The easiest thing I've ever done in my life. And not to equate what I do to somebody like McDavid, but the practice was never work.
Yeah.
It was never, I did more than 400 sets a year for 11 years. And so I was on stage every single night, at least once, sometimes 2 and 3 times for 11 straight years. And during that time, it was you wanted to be on stage. You wanted to go out to an open mic. You wanted to go do a show in Winnipeg or Ottawa or Detroit or Vancouver or Las Vegas or Germany. I've done shows now, I think, in 27 countries.
Oh, wow.
And when I quit my day job, I didn't have a choice. I was so busy with comedy that I had to quit, and I didn't even want to. I was like, I loved it. I drove a BMW. I was like, man, I enjoy this. And so Tim Nutt is also a student of it, and he is one of the finest comedians in Canada, truthfully, and a Vancouver Canucks fan.
Wow.
He's from BC. But
I kind of wish you had told me after the show.
Yeah, but he's a great guy and a great comic, and really fun to talk to. It's always nice to talk comedy with somebody who also is as passionate about it as you are, because sometimes people don't take it seriously, and you're like, how could you not want to do this all the time? Like, how could you not? So it's so fun, and it's it's cool when you travel around. There's people that I don't get to see, but at the same time, like when Dan Bias was living in Ottawa, he would come out to my shows there, and then friends in Toronto. And I've had friends come to my shows. They're like, oh, you're in Las Vegas, I'll come down and watch your show. And they come out to the show in Vegas. And I just had lunch with Derek Kowalik, who I mentioned we would plug off the top. And we waited till
I can always edit this. It's recorded. We'll put this.
No, leave it till the end. I'll tell him we mentioned it at the end. But Derek is, and so it's. I think I love the road, and I've always loved traveling, and I like the touring part of comedy. But seeing your friends is always, it makes everywhere a little bit like home.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when I run into you, when you're here in Calgary or I see you in Edmonton or wherever, I rely on you having seen all of these people so you can keep me up to date on what they're doing. We do have some tremendous friends. There's no doubt about it. Some of them have made it into your show, which maybe that's why I roll over laughing sometimes, because I know the truth behind it, which is that much better. So what's the plug for Derek? Or are you just going to say
we're just going to mention him?
Just going to mention him.
Yeah,
Derek is definitely one of my favorite people. A lot of great memories there too, so that's good. Anyway, you know what? Thank you so much for joining me. We've talked about doing this for a long time. I set up the studio today. It was kind of fun, and I'm going to go, of course, watch the show tonight. I think Oilers Nerd Alert said he might be there.
Yeah, one of their guys came down yesterday as well.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah. So, and for those on Oilers Twitter, I mean, Lars is great to go watch, and just reach out to him. I'm sure he'll get you out to the show and let you know where he's I'm gonna be out in Edmonton at a number of games this year. If you're not traveling with the Australians or wherever you're at, we'll get together when we're out there. I'd like to get a number of Oilers Twitter folks out and have some fun. So thanks again. Hopefully next time we chat, it'll be maybe in Edmonton.
Yes.
That'd be good too.
Well, thanks for having me, and I will say it was a pleasure. The caviar was a bit dry. If you guys get a chance to come over here, it was good. Don't get me wrong, but I just found and the champagne, fantastic. So
fantastic. All right. Okay. Thanks again.
OilersLive